Rest.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk about Vedic astrology, what its significance is in the world for you, how it can help us understand current events, and also um, what we can expect over the next few weeks. So, if you would like to contact me for a reading, you can do so at 508-525-0001. Or if you would like to learn Vedic astrology with me, you can also text me at that number. Again, that's 508-525-0001. Or you can also um, email me at garygomes@gmail.com. I'm going to try to make this relatively brief this week. By the way, I would like to encourage you to hit the like, the subscribe, the like um, buttons, and also press the bell for notifications as to when this is on. I don't have a lot of time today, so that's why this will seem to be much quicker than normal. So let's see now. But I may post a subsequent analysis tomorrow. So let's go to the chart in question, which is for today. I have two charts I'm going to be using today. And I'm going to talk about several topics. Oh, wrong chart. Sorry, folks. You can't see it, but it's the wrong chart. My apologies. Let me get this straightened out. It'll be right up. All right. So hopefully this will stop sharing, and the share command is working and it's being obstinate. There we go. Okay, you can see this chart. Now, this chart, I'm going to flip back to this chart later on because this is uh, the chart for the Trump tariff announcements, but I have a lot more to cover than that. So essentially, as we're speaking right now, um, the this is a chart for New Bedford, Massachusetts, um, at April 6th, 2025, at roughly 1:40 p.m. in the afternoon. We have Cancer is rising in the chart. We have a debilitated Mars in the first house, along with Moon. So this debilitated Mars is so whenever you have a debilitated planet along with a planet in its own sign, the debilitation is partially taken away. So it doesn't mean it has no impact, but as a matter of fact, this debilitation is quite pronounced because it's in the Navamsha chart, which is the harmonic ninth chart in a Vedic astrology chart. And it's clustered with all these other planets that are located over here in the ninth house in this chart. So it's a pretty significant debilitation. So what does that mean in plain English? Basically, if Mars is debilitated, people tend to get more sensitive, more emotional. They get a little bit depressed. They get a little bit anxious. They get a little bit worried. And I think one of the things that we're seeing right now is a lot of that is going through the stock market. A lot of that is going through the financial markets minds. A lot of that's happening internationally. And there is real concern that this activity is that uh, that was undertaken. Uh, the on April 2nd will be very Liberation Day for Donald Trump, which the chart will look at in a few minutes. And I'm also going to talk about France and what's happening in France and Europe as well, and also in the UK. So, so basically, this combination, this Mars in this sign, is actually sort of one of the funniest debilitations you can have. The other one is Venus and Virgo. For those of you who are familiar with Vedic astrology, and essentially, um, both planets, both Mars in this particular sign and Venus in Virgo, actually produce good combinations for that particular chart. It's just that Mars will tend to make us feel more vulnerable, more, our emotions will be more to the surface, will be a little bit more touchy, a little bit more um, aggressive. I could see that coming last week when I was driving around the city. Mars was just coming out of Gemini, so a really bad crash because somebody wasn't paying attention to a red light. And that has more to do with Mercury, which I'll explain in a minute. But um, basically, this combination is actually somewhat good for restoration of economic vitality because includes the Lord of the 10th house, which has a Sri Lagna in it, which is connected with financial growth. And it's also connected with the fifth house, which is the house of past life effort and luck, in conjunction with the first Lord, which is the moon. So that's considered to be, and the moon is waxing, it's relatively strong. That's considered to be a good placement. The concerning parts of this chart, Jupiter's in the 11th, that's always a good place to see Jupiter. That's always, so this chart does mean some financial gains. The problem we run into with for this particular chart is the institutions of the world are upset or panicky right now. And a couple of things happened last week which make that understandable. So we have Saturn entering the same sign as Rahu last weekend. And that puts two really worrisome planets together in one sign. And that negative forecast won't go away for at least until after April 15th, maybe even a bit longer, because those two grahas will be right on top of each other around April 15th. So I've spoken about this many times. This isn't the first time you've heard me say this. If you watched this show earlier, it's just that it's become more intense. And look over here. Venus is retrograde, so that makes people a little bit overly optimistic. Mercury is retrograde. That means communications are really screwed up. Okay. So interestingly enough, I have seen some reactions to that broadcast, and it's interesting in that domestically, since April 2nd or over the past week when we knew tariffs were coming, uh, the president's approval rating, at least in the United States, has improved. So it's improved, at least according to one poll, by 4 points. So that it's not a massive improvement. It's 53% versus 49%, what it was compared to what it was before. But I found that interesting. But I can also see the ninth house has to do with foreign countries or with other countries, and the 12th house Lord is placed in the ninth house. So they're going to be really concerned and really upset with us. understandably. Mars is not aspecting that particular cluster of planets, but it is involved with that cluster of planets over here in the eighth house in Cancer. So that does mean that we have a lot of enemies or a lot of opponents, a lot of people who resist us. But this is indicates most of the resistance is coming from, at least within our country, is coming from academic or what I would call vested institutions. I I I actually saw there was an interview with um, I think it was the UAW president saying that he actually approved of these policies. He didn't approve, he didn't endorse Trump, but he actually approved of the policies. And ostensibly the reason is because the policy is designed to equalize trade relations so that um, we're not paying more in tariffs than the rest of the world than the rest of the world is. So essentially, in most countries around the world, the tariffs on U.S. goods are much higher than they are on goods imported from other countries. This has been going on for a while. I'm not arguing the rightness or wrongness of it. I'm just saying this is essentially what's happened. Whether or not it will have the desired effect, I'm going to look at the April 2nd chart in a few seconds, and we'll see whether or not it will have the desired effect. Um, but we have number one, a misunderstanding of the policy. Number one, number two, a negative reaction, thinking it will doom prosperity, panic about that, and I would say a demand for the government to take action. Now this is also interesting because we had a Supreme Court decision last night indicating that funds could be withheld from um, certain institutions that were suing the United States for release of funds that they had been promised. Um, and apparently, what the Supreme Court found was that the plaintiffs had um, approached it through the wrong court system. They approached it through uh, the federal district court system when it was supposed to go through another court system, um, which essentially had jurisdiction over financial hardship, whether or not financial hardship was caused. So I found those two things interesting in that we had what I would call a lot of dislike for a policy that's been instituted and a real effort to change ethics, or not ethics, but procedures. I don't want to attach any positive or negative way to it. An attempt to change procedures in order to increase prosperity, which is what Jupiter in Taurus would indicate. And it's obviously sent shocks that Saturn and Rahu conjunction are depressive for Venus and Mercury. So one bit of good news I can give you is that Mercury will stop being retrograde on April 7th. So you'll actually start to see communications improve just a little bit, but it'll take a few weeks because Mercury's still debilitated. So there'll either be a deliberate misunderstanding, and Venus within a few days will also go direct. So that should increase the prosperity of the markets a little bit. It'll have to pass over it, but I really don't see us clearing out of it like this overall uh, gloomy forecast for about at least until the end of April. Now, I actually had a conversation this morning about this, and I was mentioning it to somebody I knew. The reaction to the policy has come just 4 days after it was implemented. It's impossible to tell within 4 days whether or not a policy will be effective or not. You can get early warning signs if a lot of people find it to be unpopular. But I've been doing a lot of research on essentially previous similar changes. And one was the Bretton Woods change in 1971, where Nixon took the United States off the gold standard. And that was a shock. That disappointed a lot of countries, but it was also done to maintain the United States' economic position in the world because essentially countries were buying up gold or were essentially withdrawing gold from the U.S. at staggering rates. So this de-incentivized uh, that particular process, but it also did hurt some economies around the world. So again, these things do have consequences. Um, these events do have consequences, but I think after, especially after April 15th, I think you're going to see more of Trump's um, policies go through unobstructed, which could generate more civil unrest, more than we've seen over the past few weeks. So that's been increasing as I predicted as April 15th approaches. And um, I think we're definitely going to see more assassination attempts, especially after July on Trump. But I don't think they'll be successful. There's something about the chart that I don't think that the chart looks very strong to me. The other thing I wanted to talk about just briefly was um, some of you may have seen that there are calls, there are demonstrations in England calling for um, Prime Minister to step down. Um, there was also a case in which Marine Le Pen was found guilty and was forbidden from running for political office for another 5 years. That effectively takes her out of the next presidential election in France. And one of the things that's a little bit disheartening about this is that essentially you're taking away the right of the French people to vote for their president because she was essentially she was considered the front runner. Um, the other thing that comes to mind immediately, and I'm sure I'm going to miss some things. So that's again that ninth house combination of government interfering with disruption or change and causing negative ramifications and misunderstandings. Um, so this is the second or third kind of event like this that's happened in Europe over the past few months. You know, so again, we're seeing, and again, it depends on how you feel about these particular individuals. Some of you may think these particular individuals shouldn't run, but again, what we're doing is basically saying that you can run as long as you hold beliefs which are um, in line with the established government, which can ultimately have negative indications for the left or centrist parties if they disagree with the prevalent um, leadership or with the current leadership. So this is something which has to be um, it's really it's causing a lot of the democracies or the Western democracies in particular to look really, really bad because they aren't allowing the people in their country to have a voice or a voice that represents them. Now, again, it's not, again, I'm not even saying I agree with these voices. Um, I think one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that and we're going through similar events in the United States where there are being limitations put on certain domestic protests, but the actual rationale behind those is more about student safety than it is about um, free speech. But it boils down to a free speech argument nonetheless. So there has to be a way to keep people safe and allow free speech to flourish. So those are the things that are on my mind right now. So essentially, how do you reach a compromise without um, denying somebody of their rights or their ability to run or represent people? And I think it's a big dilemma because essentially we're seeing societies more interested in maintaining the status quo in a lot of ways than they are interested in actually seeing uh, the will of the people actually enforced or actually heeded. So let's go over to the map for, we're going to go to the astrology map. So enough of that diatribe. But again, the astrology, at least for this day, backs it up. Um, Rahu is a disruptive planet. That's its nature. It'll oppose the sun. It'll oppose the moon. It causes great dread to the sun or the moon. And Saturn is also aspecting Ketu in this chart, so that gives what I would call a license to people to engage in violent behavior, especially if they feel threatened. So it's not a good scenario, to be honest with you. Now, I am hoping that a lot of this will calm down by the end of April, especially Venus straightened out and after we get um, after this the most intense part of the Saturn Rahu combination um, passes, and I can project past July 1st. We're going to have a lot of technological innovations. Rahu in Aquarius produces that, and also a lot of societal shifts. Now, this is the chart for the day that the announcement was made about Liberation Day. So essentially, what's happening here is we have a Leo rising. So it's an executive order being made by a king. The sun is in the eighth house, so the Lord of the sign is in the eighth house. It will have a depressing effect, at least immediately, because Sun and Saturn are in the same sign in conjunction. Venus is retrograde. Rahu is at 3 degrees, right on top of Venus, and Mercury is at 3 degrees and 36 minutes. So this will create kind of a panic about this. Mars just entered Cancer when this announcement was made. So that will put a damper on international trade. But the positive thing about this, the very positive thing about this, is we have a Jupiter Moon conjunction in the 10th house. So the ultimate outcome will, I think, be positive, but, and especially for foreign trade, but you will have a lot of people opposing it. You will have people trying to take it down from the background, and it will have unintended consequences, to be honest. So if I'm looking at this, this is overall not a horrible chart, but you have a lot of planets in the eighth house, which essentially is the house connected with the stock market. So that's why the stock market took an immediate dive after this announcement was made. And that's why they're impatient for the president, for President Trump to reverse his position. Now, I think ultimately in the long run, this may be beneficial. I don't know whether or not he will stay with it for the long run, especially with this Mars passing over his 12th house. But we'll have to wait and see. Okay. He has proven to be remarkably stubborn, and people were panicking the other day when he didn't immediately answer Vietnam's offer to go to zero tariffs if the United States would match. So I think that those are the kinds of things that we have to look out for. But definitely, the ninth house Lord is in the 12th house. It will definitely affect relations with foreign countries, no doubt about it. Ultimately, because Jupiter and Moon are in the 10th house, and Mercury is the house of gains, is debilitated, but along with an exalted Venus in the 8th house, ultimately it will mean longer term stock market gains, but not immediately. And if we look at the Navamsha chart, it's actually better for money than the main chart is. We have all these planets located, and Mercury's in Leo, and a very good sign for cash advances. So I'm thinking that behind the scenes, with all these planets in the second house, now again, Saturn and Rahu do depress things. In this house, Mars depresses things. But I'm thinking if I look at my longer term maps, we'll come out of our real estate downturn relatively soon. I would say within about 3 months, or the high interest rate environment, and also the jobs report last week was actually quite good. So it's one of the things where you have this confusion. We're not really going to have a good idea on what the longer term effects of this are going to be really for about another 3 weeks, to be honest. So in the meantime, don't panic about it. Don't get upset about it. Um, don't lose your perspective on it. And I would say the same is holds true for a lot of the academic cutbacks, a lot of the shrinkage of a lot of the proposed shrinkage of the government and all those things. There have been, and the motivating reason for this, the rationale for this was actually um, not just trade deficits, but also the economic profile of the country. Because if the ninth house lord is in the 12th house, debilitated, the motivation is not really to hurt anybody. It's really to try to address this very real financial crisis we see ourselves in right now. And I'm thinking that, again, there will be conspiracies or efforts to overturn it, to reverse it. That's fully expected. Um, and the same as I'm seeing some efforts um, to reverse or to fight um, cutbacks, the overall governmental cutbacks. And the safest way to actually do something like that is what they call a rescission bill, in which Congress can vote to rescind the funds that were authorized in the first place by Congress. But I think you'll see this tug um, this tug of wills go back and forth. But I really found it interesting that essentially the district courts, the Supreme Court found that the U.S. district courts were not the place this should be litigated because it has to do with financial damage. Uh, so so that so that they've been litigating it through courts that they knew would rule favorably on their behalf, and the appropriate avenue seems to be, at least according to um, interpretation, which seems to be through a financial damages court. Now, I'm no constitutional expert. But like I said, I think that uh, that was probably the most um, telling and determinative court decision made over the past 3 or 4 months. The other thing we can look at for the economy, I think will do fine. And as a matter of fact, I think it'll do better after July overall. International economies, Europe is in a difficult state right now. China's in a difficult state right now. Um, most economies around the world are in a difficult state, mainly because of over obligations that were put in place because of COVID and also because of mass immigrations. So that's something I'm neither criticizing nor advocating for these other countries. And again, the idea that a lot of these countries have to support a war effort or get involved in several war efforts around the world. That's bothersome. I still think um, the United States decision to get involved in with the Houthis was not a good decision, and I said that I think last week to get involved. So it's not that I'm siding with everything that's happening in this particular administration. It's just that a lot of the significant issues, I think, are things that have to be addressed. That's a personal opinion, that non-astro, but the astrology kind of backs it up as well. Um, so this is, you know, anybody can disagree with me, just disagree politely and considerately, as opposed to saying, calling me brainwashed or whatever you want to call me. Okay. For the individual signs, Aries has an interesting week. There'll be a lot of focus on the home for the next 2 months or so. A lot of unhappiness, maybe even fights with relationship partners, unfortunately. Jupiter and Moon in the second house is actually quite good for financial growth, though. Moon is in this exalted sign. That's one thing I forgot to mention about this particular chart uh, of of the Independence Day. I'm sorry, not Independence Day. My apologies. Um, Liberation Day chart, and as the moon is exalted in this chart, so that sort of cancels out the debilitation of Mars. So that's another positive thing in the chart. But again, it will cause some damage, definitely. I'm not trying to um, turn that smile upside down. It's basically it's a risk. Whenever you change things, you take a risk, but it's a greater risk to keep on doing things the same way. Okay. Um, so if we're talking about Aries, we have this. So let's go back to Aries. Aries is in Aries Lord is Mars in the fourth house, fights with wife, fights with partners. Jupiter's in the second house, good for financial gain. And also K2's in the sixth house can give some temporary illness problems. Good, somewhat good for it's it will give some good results from foreign investments or from travel, but it'll be a little bit frustrating for the sign at least until April 15th. I can safely say that. And after April 7th, at least communications will improve for the sign. They've been horrible over the past few weeks. For Taurus, Taurus has Jupiter in the first house still. It's a good time to acquire things, to get money put together. We have the Lord of this sign is in its exaltation state, so perhaps a little bit overly optimistic, and it'll turn direct this week, so we'll become more realistic about our financial prospects this coming week. But it's still exalted for the next month or so, so that's actually good. And Venus with Rahu actually creates a kind of a Raj Yoga, financial wealth producing yoga for this chart between the first house and the 11th house. So that's actually quite good. There's an exchange of lords between Jupiter and Venus. That's also good. Mercury's debilitation is canceled, as I said before, but it still has an effect. So, at least for this chart, most of the action revolves around the 11th house of gains, which should be good for this chart, but slow. Saturn's aspecting Jupiter, we should expect inflation for about another couple of months. And Mars is in the third house along with the moon. So there's some anxiety or worry about it, some fear of reprisals. But K2's in the fifth house. A lot of places will be stymied. It will just strike back uh, without thinking. So, so we're talking about trade war, not real war. Um, Gemini, and again, I really doubt the trade war is going to last very long. It'll last for a few months. Um, Gemini has its Lord in the 10th house, so it's heavily focused on career and financial growth and even investment growth. Mars is in the second house. It's going to be a little bit aggravated and a little bit strapped for money over the next couple of months. But it'll be able to meet its obligations. Money will come in at the last minute because Jupiter's in the 12th house. That's a dictum I learned years ago from an astrologer who sadly passed away. A guy named George Roman, who was a really nice man. And let's see now. The sun is ruler of, so he'd probably be appalled that I'm using him in this broadcast, but that's but the sun, the Lord of the second house of money, I'm sorry, the Lord of the third house is the sun is placed in the 10th house. So there will be some career ambition for this sign. This sign will be very busy this week. And let's see now, K2's in the fourth. There will be some additional family problems or worries about family problems and worried about health of family members, but that will pass relatively quickly. And let's see now, for Cancer, Cancer has Mars and Moon in the first house. As I said before, that's a Raj Yoga. That's a good combination. This sign should do pretty well this month. It has Jupiter in the 11th house, and Sun and Venus and Mercury and Saturn and Rahu in the ninth house. That's still a Raj Yoga for this particular sign because the Sun is the Lord of the second house, and Venus is the Lord of the 11th house. So that's a kind of a Dana Yoga or a wealth-producing combination. It's obstructed a bit, if I'm honest, because the 12th Lord, which is a house of expenditures, is in that same sign. But this overall should indicate that Cancer will bring more money in than it will spend. It'll also be very careful with money. And K2's in the third house. It'll also be very brave this month. Um, Leo has the sun in the eighth house. So people with Leo rising or Leo suns should be careful about people either talking behind their back or conspiring behind their back, especially with this combination, hidden attacks. But again, K2 in the second house will make this sign kind of fearless too. And it will feel like it's doing a good thing because Jupiter's in the 10th house. You'll feel like it's doing the right thing. K and Jupiter's aspecting K2, and it won't care about the consequences. Libra is the third house. The third house ruler is in the eighth house, and that gives some unexpected gains, some unexpected financial gains, especially around the end of the week. I think you'll see the stock market start to pull out of its doldrums by the end of this coming week. Maybe sooner, maybe tomorrow when Mercury turns direct, although Mercury tends to have what I would call short-term Mercury retrograde effect even after it turns direct. So communications will still be scrambled. Let's see now. So Leo it's going to have to watch its back, but it's protected overall by Jupiter in the 10th, and I think that's good. For Virgo, and Mars and Moon are in the 12th house for Leo. I have my apologies. So I'll give expenditures, but it's expenditures connected with real estate or with investments. K2 is in the first house for Virgo rising. K2 is direct, stationary direct. As I've mentioned many times before, I do tend to like that position because K2 will stand very firm. It will do what it believes in. Rahu's in the seventh house. It won't quite know who to trust, relationship-wise or partnership-wise. Sun is in the 12th house, so relationships can be a little bit draining, and they'll feel a little bit of animosity. They feel like there'll be a little bit of animosity towards them. And we have the Gadi Lagna is in the second house, so the focus will be on financial gains, and there will be some financial gains, especially towards the end of this week for this sign. We have Jupiter in the ninth house. That's a good placement for it for this particular rising sign, and that will give luck to this sign this month. We're still about a few days away from the 23 degree of Jupiter. I'm going to be looking at that very closely this time. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if an actual war or a trade war will break out over the next few days, over the next week or so, over the next 2 weeks. Let's see now. Libra. Let's look at Libra. Libra will focus upon partnerships. There will be financial gains from relationship partners because of the Sri Lagna being in the seventh house. We have a lot of planets in the sixth house for this sign, so there'll be a lot of obstructions, a lot of health issues to be addressed, and also some vitality issues to be addressed for this sign. But it will make this sign very determined to succeed. Jupiter's in the eighth house can give unexpected financial benefits to the sign. Mars is in the 10th house along with the moon. It can give this sign just increased career aspirations and career energy. Let's see now. For Scorpio, Scorpio has Jupiter placed in the seventh house, so relationship life should be a bit better. And we have a lot of planets in the fifth house. That will give a combination of rewards from children and also financial gains from children, but also financial obligations for children. So it won't be a wash, but it'll be difficult. They'll have a lot of issues. Mars, Moon are in the ninth house. That's typically a good sign for Scorpio rising, according to a lot of Vedic astrologers, but this is actually a rather good conjunction for this particular sign. So that gives a little bit of luck, a little bit of career luck to the sign as well. And the sun in the fifth house benefits from past career activities. So even though there'll be some confusion, it'll still work out well for the sign. For Sagittarius, Sagittarius is the rising sign of the United States. Um, we have a lot of domestic disputes going on right now, obviously, but for Sagittarians in general, you'll kind of parallel that particular placement. And one thing I did hear about was Neptune entered Aries, and one astrologer indicated that was the advent of a civil war in the United States, but it looks more like we'll have more aggressive violence in around 2008 or 2007, 2008, not right now. Um, and that's mainly because Neptune is only taking up temporary residence in the sign. And it does rather match kind of specifically. Neptune is still in this sign, is still in Pisces, and it does kind of match Rahu and Saturn in the sixth house or in the fourth house of, of domestic unrest, you know, for this particular sign and bad communications. Jupiter's in the sixth house. The United States will be in a period of struggle trying to get itself geared up for success, which will come during the summer months and all through next year. Mars is in the eighth house. There will be a lot of domestic disputes with this sign and relationship issues. But finances look not so bad. And I'm not ignoring Venus and Mercury, two benefics in this particular sign, are usually good for financial growth. For Capricorn, Capricorn has a combination of very significant planets in the third house. Um, and I know people who have this combination, they tend to do pretty well. Um, it's really interesting because this sign will Capricorn will work very hard, very forcefully. It will have some financial gains this month. It will also have, I would say, some luck to children, but also a little bit of distress from relationship partners, some arguments with the relationship partners. K2's in the ninth house, but if the relationship is strong, it will not break anything away. K2's in the ninth house over here. If K2's in the ninth, it does tend to give unexpected breaks or interruptions at work. But overall, this is not a bad placement for Capricorn. Aquarius has its second house is loaded with planets. Um, you would like to associate with inventors or humanitarians. Rahu and Saturn, Sun and Venus and Mercury are in the second house. That's generally a Downy producing combination for these planets. But since Rahu, Saturn, Venus, and Mercury are all clustered together, that'll probably come more towards the end of the month. But I'm still expecting to see some financial benefits over the next few weeks. Um, the Jupiter's in the fourth house. That's a good placement for financial benefit. Mars and Moon are in the sixth house. It does give the sign the ability to fight back and to grow. Um, so that's actually a good placement. Career life looks actually pretty good for the sign. And, finally for Pisces, Saturn, Rahu, Sun, Venus, Mercury are in the first house. It's not really a horrible placement. Venus tends to do well in this sign. It's exalted in this sign, as I've said many times before. Sun is kind of a difficult planet for this rising sign, but Mercury, it owns angles, so it's actually rather beneficial. Saturn owns the house of gains, so it will bring some expenses, but also some financial gains. And Rahu will actually tend to amplify the financial gains for this sign. But it'll be a tough week. I'm not going to lie to you, Pisces. Jupiter's in the third house, good for financial gains. Mars is in the fifth house, very good for financial gains for this particular sign, and good relationships with children. So overall, even though Pisces has some obstacles, it doesn't look like this will be a horrible week for it. It's just watch out for lack of communications and over optimism in the first part of the week. Let's go to the world map. Yeah, see where we're having some issues. And let me pull my ugly mug out of the way. And you have Jupiter is running through here, through Alaska, and also up into India, into Nepal, into China, Russia. So those parts of the west coast of the United States looks like it's in pretty good shape. Um, Really, the most anxiety will occur around um, the area from Montana all the way down to New Mexico and through central Mexico. This is where a lot of the border crossings occur, okay, over here. So there'll be some anxiety about that. In terms of Mars, we can expect some violence in North Dakota, South Dakota, down through Iowa, down through Louisiana and Mississippi, and down into Cuba, and maybe even down into Venezuela, Bolivia, and Paraguay and Uruguay. Uh, there's a sun sign, so indicating some extreme government control in Michigan all the way down through uh, Louisiana. And finally, we have a moon sign running through um, Ohio and Pennsylvania, down to West Virginia, down to North Carolina. And the moon is placed in Cancer, so there can be some arguments or some fights and definite changes in government in Puerto Rico. Been um, that's been in the works for a while now. And also some changes in government, maybe in Brazil and even in Guyana. I have heard there are protests in Guyana. I could be remembering incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. And there's a Jupiter line passing near Greenland and Iceland. So Greenland's going to probably maintain its independence for a while. Um, let's see now. There's a Venus, Rahu, Saturn line, Mercury line running through West Africa, near the Ivory Coast, and also close to England and close to France. And there's also, I have to come closer, a sun line running up through uh, my shoulder's starting to hurt, up through up through Germany, affecting France, affecting Italy. So some governmental pressure exerted in those countries. There's a Mars line, so this can indicate increased violence in Sweden, and all the way down to Germany, to Greece, Italy, and down into Libya, I believe, and all down into Central Africa and South Africa. South Africa is showing signs of consolidating or becoming a much larger country, I believe. There's a moon line going through Finland, um, eastern, the eastern part of Europe, and through Turkey. So that indicates to me a change in government, maybe some protests because this area of Turkey is between um, Mars and the moon line, and maybe even changes in government in Egypt, Sudan, and all the way down to South Africa, as I said before. The other three lines, the other lines I'm worried about are Pakistan, Afghanistan, and to a lesser extent, Iraq, um, or Iran. But Iran is really not close to any of the planetary lines except for Jupiter. So um, I'm not seeing anything really earth-shakingly different happening in this part of the world, although it is between a Saturn line and the moon line. So this can indicate a change in government in Iran as well. But it's very wide. It's a very wide berth. Um, we can expect um, some panic in India. So maybe some financial issues, maybe some governmental scandals in India over the next week or so, and a Jupiter line running over here, some involvement with the courts. And there's a sun line running through Myanmar, what used to be called Burma, and touching on Indonesia, and a Mars line running through China. So China and North Korea will be experiencing some protests or some negative action, negative military action. There's a moon line running through Japan, and the Philippines. So, and also Borneo and Indonesia. So we can expect some changes in these government's policies. And finally, the last Saturn Rahu Venus line passes and Jupiter lines pass close to Australia. Some changes in the government or some protests against the government, and also a lot of protests against the government in this region of the world. So over here, I neglected to look at Ukraine. There's a moon line running through Ukraine or close to Ukraine right now. That does indicate to me within the next few months some changes in government in Ukraine as well. So over here we have, so I didn't talk that much about Ukraine or Israel, um, but Israel has a moon line next to it, so that will continue. I think it'll shift in terms of a matter of days where the policy is in Israel, but it will still, I think Israel itself will be taking the same action. Um, so the policy, so let me see if I can clarify that. They'll be doing the same thing but differently. Okay. So this line over here, so close to New Zealand, 5 minutes. Are you making up? I'm almost done with the show. Bye. Bye. So this particular line over here, this is really these lines right here, right here, right here, and right here are where all the um, action is taking place or the most depressing action is taking place. It can actually be good for instilling reform or instilling change in a civilization or a country, but they're never pleasant to go through. So it's overall, it's that conjunction is not a positive conjunction, but sometimes you have to go through a little bit of disruption to come out clear-headed on the other side. Okay? So don't worry, everything will work out fine. And I'm not just saying that to make you feel better. I, I know it in my bones. So just stay calm, look for opportunities which will increase your knowledge, increase your access to resources, and benefit you directly over the next few months. Okay? Um, that may sound selfish, but it's really not because if you're not there and you don't take care of yourself, you can't help other people. Okay? That's just the way it is. So just be aware of the importance of self-care over the next couple of months. Okay? All right. I love you all. Take care of yourselves and God bless you all. Thank you for watching. And again, I love you all and I appreciate you watching this far. Thank you very much and have a great week. Bye-bye now. Happy Mercury Direct.